Good morning, YouTube. All right, good video today for you. And if you still have an M1, you're in luck. All right, but with a little caveat in here. So I've got my M1 back. If you saw my video yesterday, turned in the M4, you'll know why if you watched the video. So I'm back down to my M1 again because I was able to get it back as well as my 4K screen. Now, I have this thing about, I want to play my game, but there's also 50,000 other games and then some inside the Core app that you download from the Epic Games Store. And a lot of those games are pretty freaking cool, and some of them are kind of like, really cheesy. But hey, you gotta have a variety mix of everything, right? Kids, adults, and so on. Anyways, but many of you know this is like literally my favorite game next to Far Cry. In fact, I haven't even played Far Cry in forever. So, anyway, with the Epic Game Launcher in Crossover, you will need to change the video setting in that for I think it's the Crossover side. Anyway, you got to change it to metal. Okay, don't let it go on auto, or you're gonna have the worst experience in your life, and you're gonna get really pissed. Switch it to metal because that's what Apple uses. All right. Now, with that being said, this ran really awesome on the M4, okay? So I was getting pretty much 90 frames per second, much higher resolution than 1080p too. I was like in the 2K, 2.5K territory, and I was still on medium settings, because that's kind of a little caveat there. Medium is kind of where you're at, but at least on an M4 you can jump to a higher resolution. Here we're kind of stuckish at the 1080p if we want it to look good, because when you start dropping below 1080p, graphically, it doesn't matter what setting you're on, it's going to look crummier and crummier. Okay, you should know this, okay? Especially if you've been on PCs long enough. So anyway, I'm getting basically around 55 FPS here, okay? And as far as the game settings go, within the Core app, and it'll be like this across all your games because this is your main settings area. If you go under the video, okay, I took the shadow quality down to low, but I left everything else medium. The game will default boot the first time, well, Core will default boot the first time, as everything at ultra, okay? Now on an M1, this is going to be pretty damn choppy and only about 20-something-ish FPS. Not really acceptable. Now, my frame rate of my screen or refresh rate is 60 hertz, but I still wanted my frame rate limit to be 120 FPS. This is going to allow me more FPS if it's available. You might get, I don't know, a little bit of screen stuff going on. A lot of people talk about that. I've never actually had that problem with a 60 hertz panel. Anyway, so you put the full screen mode onto full screen, but you could go full screen windowed or windowed. I like the full screen period. I don't want to see anything on my Mac down here. 1920 by 1080p. We do get a lot of extra selections. Now, on my Mac side, I have a higher resolution setting, and we don't actually have 1920 by 1080. Okay, so I might be able to tweak a little bit more FPS if I drop my screen resolution of my Mac down to default, which is like 17 something. Okay, but that's also going to interfere with the game a little bit for what we can choose. However, that's what we're here for, is to find these things out. Okay, now, right now the game is playing great. My map looks normal, okay? Little bit of blurrishness from what I'm used to seeing on a Windows computer, but I can still zoom in for some really excellent detail. I can still see all the stuff from the ocean and everything. That has a lot to do with your medium settings for graphics, okay? So even medium can look better at a little bit higher, but you're going to have to tweak things, right, to where you're comfortable and still be able to play the game, all right? So what we want to do right now is I'm going to go and I'm going to quit out of this game completely, okay? I'm going to exit Core, and we're going to say, okay, we want to get out of Core. Now, I'm going to leave the Epic Games thing up and running. Now where we're sitting at right now, it says graphics is D3D metal, all right? That's where you want to be in. You don't want to be on wine or the other choices. You've got to be on metal, okay? Synchronization says default, where you go async or msync. I left that on default because I don't even know what the hell that is. High resolution mode will go against you, okay? It's going to allow a lot more higher resolution capabilities, and it does its own little defaulting things, and well, it just kind of really doesn't go well. It makes things look really crappy, okay? Already been there, done that, wrote the book and burned it. So, in that, let's close that out, okay? Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to set my settings for my screen resolution, because this is something I've talked about on PCs that does affect them. Oh, okay, so on the M1 I can get 1920 by 1080 default. On the M4 MacBook it was like 17 something. So let's put our main screen into default mode. Okay, so that's now defaulted, which makes things really big now. Holy cow! And now let's go fire up the game and let's see if we do get an actual FPS change. Technically, on a PC, you will. On a Mac, we're not sure, 100%. If we match everything, if it's going to be better or not. But I did do some experimenting before, and it does seem to be there, but how much of a boost do we get on an M1 compared to an M4? Okay, that's kind of where I'm at, because this is going to be my main computer now until it's extinct. I do want to mention something about Crossover too, by the way, that may be a little bit of a downer for some of you. Crossover currently, at least, uses Rosetta Translator, okay? I just freshly reloaded this Mac and I didn't run any of my programs that I know for a fact run Rosetta. So I fired this thing up with like the Crossover app, and it wanted Rosetta, which means a very bad thing because Apple is ditching Rosetta very, very soon. So the company Codeweavers that does Crossover needs to have a pure Apple Silicon version coming up very soon, which will also help further accelerate how well it's going to perform. Because under Rosetta, that's a translation layer that already bogs us down a little bit, okay, which is holding us back from even playing some even better gaming experiences, okay? So once we can ditch out Rosetta and go pure Apple Silicon apps, well, that's going to be even better. Okay, now let's see what it tells us our FPS is. Now we're at 64, 65 FPS in the game. Now, if you can't play this game with that kind of a setting, there's an issue, okay? And remember, the only thing we changed in the medium settings was we turned the shadow quality to low, because in the game, do you really need shadows that bad? Like, that kind of like, wah! Okay, some games you might want it, right? But in this one, no, you really don't need it. So let's go for a little venture here. Let me go eat some bananas again. It's a good thing I know how to clone food here. Otherwise I'd be running out all the time. Be like, I'm starving to death. Okay, and pizzas are for health, bananas are for stamina, and you need both, okay? We're not going to jack our stamina too much right now. So graphically, what I'm seeing here is it looks really good. It's not perfect like I'm used to on a Windows computer playing this game at ultra settings, but you know what? It doesn't have to be absolute perfection to look really good and play really well. So let's take a look at our map now. Now, our map seems to be pretty good. It doesn't seem to be, I think as far as the fuzziness goes, it's probably a little tiny less, but not something that you're going to notice massively from what we just had. Now, I know you guys can't see what I'm seeing because we are shooting this with my iPad. I would have used my onboard screen recorder, except that gave me an issue with Crossover. It also bogs you down and robs you of frames per second from the game when you're doing that. So, on the other hand, let's pull out the glider, which looks normal. Holy cow! If you go into those high settings too, by the way, for the high resolution, even if everything else is lower, you won't see your skin on your glider. It's just going to look like sticks. Among other things, you're going to see bottoms of the ocean that you shouldn't be seeing. So in playing, I'm not seeing any farts or stalls yet. Now, keep in mind, I probably am in virtual memory a bit with the game because I only have 16 gigs of RAM in my Mac, which also makes a difference even for your video settings. If you have like 32 gigs of RAM, then I pretty much guarantee you it's going to be the best experience you're going to receive on your current Mac. Okay, with 32 gigs of RAM. On a PC, just magnifique, yeah. Okay, it's just kind of the way it goes. It's a native PC app, for crying out loud. But anyways, yeah, this is going actually really good. I haven't gotten any farts or glitches yet, so that's actually really nice. Fighting is going really well. Not having any issues there. We're doing great. The ocean looks actually reasonably good, considering its medium settings. That's really nice. Okay, I can play this. I can be happy playing this. Now, Crossover, according to their website, they're not a subscription base like Parallels is. Or you can, spend, I think it's what, $500 or something on Parallels. But Parallels is a piece of crap for gaming. Everybody knows that by now. And if you don't know it, well, now you do, because that's the word that's out everywhere that I've seen, where people have said Parallels is horrible for gaming, and Crossover kind of wins, which, in my opinion, it's winning. Okay? Now, unfortunately, we cannot take the actual core program for some reason and just download that onto our computer, even direct onto a PC. It needs the Epic Game Launcher in order to run. It installs whatever it does into your computer. In this case, because it's all an emulation system and Crossover says they're not an emulator, but whatever, okay? Uses Wine technology, either way. But we can't do wraps like we can on Paul the Teleporting Toolkit with this particular program called Core, or Core World, okay? Now I have other games I'm going to test, so I'm not giving you a review yet. I just want to show you what this is like on an M1 compared to my M4, which is on my channel. I played this on the M4, and I was just like really happy, right? We're still pushing 50s in the FPS range. I have the music turned off because the music in the game really annoys me, but otherwise I left all the other stuff on, which I didn't even see any FPS difference with the other ones. So it's kind of like, well, really didn't help. So I figured just leave it the way it is and it's good to go. So anyway, I like it. I think it's going well. However, even though this is technically one of the most played apps in my Epic Game Store collection, I do have other games I will be testing out that are a lot more demanding than what the Core app is. And we'll see how that goes for the M1 wise. And I never did get to try Game of Thrones on the M4 MacBook Air, but I don't really care because there was only 16 gigs of RAM in it, and there's 16 in this. The difference, other than some obvious points, is my drive in this is a lot faster than the M4, which makes absolutely zero difference. If you've got 1,000 megabytes per second read and write, you're not going to do any better with any game, okay? That's more for like video editing performance capabilities and a few other things. But I'm definitely running much faster on the drive in this thing than the M4 was, but that doesn't matter. They both had 16 gigs of RAM, and I don't really care about RAM speed that much because RAM is RAM and that's all there is to it. Yes, faster RAM does have some benefits I will agree with, but there are many benefits that it really doesn't have, or doesn't really matter to have, okay? So that's looking good on the waterfalls. That's really nice. So we're doing pretty good here. I'm quite pleased with how this is running. I currently don't have a PC anymore. If you've been staying tuned, I had to get rid of my Glory Toy because some bills came up that had to come first, and that sucked. But I am using my wife's computer, which is a PC. She's got a Mac as well, but she's not using the PC right now, so I kind of scored it from her, and she's okay with it. So I could easily just play this game there. However, out of banana power, there goes my stamina. But the thing is, I also want to be able to see how much I can play on the M1 with using something like Crossover. And now that I know how to set Crossover up, it really does help a lot. Okay. The other thing is .NET Framework. I only installed 4.72, I think it was this time. Last time on the M4 I did 3.5, I think it was, and 4.72. This time I just did the 4.72, and that's it, and it's working great either way. So quite happy. If you have an M1 with at least 16 gigs of RAM, okay, you are definitely going to end up with 8 CPU cores and 8 GPU cores, unless you got the bottom of the barrel M1 iMac, which, you know, you got shortchanged a little bit on one of them there. But otherwise, from 8 cores of GPU power in this to the 10 GPU cores, which have a lot more other goodies in the M4, there really isn't much difference here. As far as CPU cores go, gaming is performance cores, not efficiency. And the only difference between the M4, which had 4 performance cores out of those 10 full cores, they ran at 4.4 gigahertz, which you don't need any kind of that speed for the majority of games out there. Okay, this is 3.2 gigahertz on the performance cores. We have more than enough horsepower here. It's the video stuff that's a really big issue with Mac, especially well, when we're talking gaming. But especially when you got a lack of RAM in your computer, you have less video RAM available to you. And like I said before many times, we don't know what Apple really gives us in total. And if they did separate the GPU and gave it its own video RAM, this thing would rock out at ultra settings and probably go nuts for FPS, and so would any other game. And if we had access to more RAM too, on even what we would get. But we can't even upgrade our own RAM in Apple Silicon. But this is my experience. This is what we've done for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to check out Crossover running on the M4 MacBook Air 15-inch that I had. And you can kind of compare notes yourself. But I think as long as you drop your main OS resolution down to 1080p and match it to this at 1080p, you do get the better experience, which we do see happening on Windows computers. And I have seen doing that matching even on the M4 bit. You know, it's just the M4 is a little bit more of a performer, and that it's going to give you a lot more higher FPS, and you won't have to turn the shadows off either. But half one dozen the other, okay? So anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and staying tuned. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to check out a couple more of my games in the Epic Game Store collection, see how they're going to run, especially Game of Thrones, because it's a lot more demanding than the Core World app. But do check out Core World. It's actually called Core in the Epic Game Store, but it's technically Core World. There's about 50,000 plus games inside this thing, and this is just one of them, okay, out of multitudes. So anyways, see ya.